showing up. Last time we ended up here. How does the story work? Maybe I came up with structure. Nope. This is sales letter. You can whatever. We've never liked paying through our noses for simple things that everybody should afford, like using the electric appliances without restriction. However, we simply settled thinking that's the economy, or it'll it'll be better next year. Month after month, struggling not to fall behind on bills. And that's until the winter of 2015, December 29th. Tuesday, the absolute worst day of my life. I think I already read this. The Mississippi River had broken out of its bed and flooded the surroundings. So there was a blackout. It ripped down hundreds of power lines around our area, and we suddenly found ourselves without power. My wife and I discussed about driving to my parents in Lexington, Kentucky. But we were looking at a 6-hour drive in the night. We decided to wait for the power to come back. Big mistake. The house was getting cold, and it was getting cold fast. Night came, still no power. I tried calling the electric company on my cell phone to find out when power would be restored. So this is a story, and this is engaging. I think. If you know the 5 stages of awareness, this lead is for unaware audiences, and a story approach works a lot. When you're speaking with this type of uh, audience, I tried calling the electric company on my cell phone to find out when power would be restored, but all I got was a pre-recorded message saying that they were aware of the problem and that it would be between 48 and 72 hours before the power would be back online. Quickly, temperature in our house reached around 40 degrees. Well, this is not copy per se, but it's solid storytelling. And I think that so this part of the copy itself letter is not copy writing per se, because you're not telling something. You're just telling the story of the guru, and for that helps a lot to know this. And this is a task that I wanna do later, I guess, and that is to research storytelling skills like knowing the specific elements of a good story. And if I find something, maybe I'll put it in here. talk about this. But don't depend on me if you're watching this. Just research yourself. This is just what I'm doing. But something that I've learned from Evaldo Albuquerque in its book 16 Words Better. You should look up for this book. In one of the chapters, he presents a way to tell storytelling in the ABT structure, which stand for but and stand for and but therefore. Those are the elements of my good story, at least, and I'm identifying them. For example, this is the open. All that until the winter of 2015, December, the absolute worst day of my life. The news warned the population about the rising of the freezing waters of Mississippi, but we never had problems. We were miles from a river and we were safe. But this time was different. Around 7 p.m., news warned everybody in the area the river had risen like never before. After a few minutes, all lights went off. Therefore, I immediately thought it was a simple blackout. I went to check on my wife and two daughters. They were fine for the moment. That for the moment is an open loop so that the Mississippi had broken out its bed and flooded the surroundings. My wife and I discussed about driving to my parents in Lexington, Lexington, Kentucky. So yeah, that's it. Some kind of structure. Quickly, the temperature in our house reached around 4 degrees around midnight. I want to check on my family, and that what I saw made me freeze in my tracks. My wife and daughters were lying on the bed, embracing each other, shivering cold, muffled in thick blankets. You can't imagine how I felt, not being able to protect my family. I rushed and wrapped my arms around them as I could in a futile attempt to give them what little body heat I had. And then my 5-year-old Lizzie said in a shivering voice, "Daddy, I'm cold and hungry. I wish we had a warm soup." I immediately burst in tears. It was the most devastating moment of my life. I felt like my world collapsed. I felt powerless because there was nothing I could do to protect the ones I cared for most. It is like painting a picture. Um, Page 3. This, this, this. How do I note down this? Page 3. Guru story. What I feel about this story is that for this unaware audience, the this story, I don't know if it's real. I don't care. I'm just telling what I think it's doing on the minds of the reader, on the reader's minds, and that is painting painting a picture of a potential problem the reader might have, because already here the guru presented himself as someone like the reader. That's so the reader identifies himself with this person, and if this happened to him, it could happen to you. So this is important. This story is painting a picture of a potential problem the reader might have by telling the story of the guru, which we already implied that is uh, similar to us, because he already I said the same things that you think. So I don't know. After the presentation of the prospect, where you create some uh, report, then you tell your story, and you tell a problem that happened to you that could happen to the reader, and that's it. That's the goal. It makes the reader more aware of the problem, because it happened to you, it could happen to me as a reader. Uh, and if the reader becomes more aware of the problem, then it's logical that he may be more open for looking for the solution. And here it is. I felt powerless because there was nothing I could do to protect the worst the ones I cared for most, and I simply felt furious, outraged about the fact that I knew that I was the only one to blame for getting in this situation, and worse, for getting my family into this dangerous situation. I was furious that I was completely dependent on the electric company to power my home. Enemies. And furious about the fact that for so many years I let it slide and thought maybe it'll be better next year. But those money sucking electricity mobsters bled me and my family dry. Enemies. And VOC, voice of customer. Let it slide and maybe it'll be better next year. I think it's the VOC, voice of customer. And these are the exact same words that the reader, if they did the research, this is what a reader thinks. And if you flag that, if you use the same words that they use, then you identify more with the prospect, and you think that what happened to him could happen to you. It was the moment I realized I was at the end of my rope. I swore to myself I'd never put my wife and two daughters in a similar situation again. We left for my parents the very next day and came back after some time. I immediately began researching every single energy alternative I could find. This is another section of the. So, the story so far I've had this structure. This is it. The structure of the story so far. I call it this the uh, part one of story of this story. I call it the hero's calling. The open. Everything is harmonically normal, but something breaks the pattern. In this case, everything was the I think so. But they open the context. Then something breaks the pattern. That's the but. And I'm not talking about with what you said, but therefore, because of that pattern interrupted, and this uh, story, it was, I thought this was a small problem, a simple blackout, but it became a disaster. And I don't know if put it with that name, but show up, people, do your homework. Maybe no one's watching this, but you should show up each day. We left for my parents the very next day and came back after some time. I immediately began researching every single energy alternative I could find. I made it my sole purpose because leaving my family's well-being in the hands of electric companies clearly wasn't an option anymore. What electric? The enemies are enemies. Not only did their power lines always seem to go down in unexpected moments, here he creates enemies. The enemies are the electric companies, and he restates the problem. That problem is they aren't reliable and they seem to go down in unexpected moments, and their prices are too high and creates enemies. I imagined the CEOs going to the bank and cashing out my hard earned money, maybe even laughing while doing it. So he's selling away from the electric companies. And if Kyle Milligan uses new, easy, safe, and big, here it is new, easy, safe, and big. What I do to sail away from is old, hard, unsafe, unreliable, and small. I came up with that. So if you want to sail away, that's what you do. Aarhus. Nesby and Aarhus. Aarhus. I don't know how to pronounce it. So I immediately began to look at the problem from every angle to break the chains big electric had around my family. There had to be something. Frustrated, I created a list of what I felt my new source of energy should be. Cheap and easy to obtain or build. Easy to move. If I needed a bug out of town, it needed to be something I could easily carry with me. Can use a constant source of power to create energy. There was no sun, no gas or wind. It should still work fine without interruption. So I considered buying a heavy-duty generator. It's certainly a reliable source of power, so I looked pretty much into this option. However, when I started to consider the costs, I realized I was looking at a minimum $1,000 investments to get a really high quality generator, not to mention the fuel usage and with the fluctuating gas prices. Try powering your home with full time with a generator. You'd need to use about 90 gallons of gas per month and at a cost of around uh, 250 or more to do it. Plus, it's not like I wanted to have a 90 gallons bomb around my family and house. So this option was off the list. What did we learn today so far? We learned two things. We learned that stories are great for painting a picture of a potential problem the reader might have, and this works for unaware audiences. It makes the reader more open, more aware of the problem, and more open to the solution that you'll present. And the other thing was always and the first uh, section or the first part, the first structure of the first part of the story, which I call the hero's calling, which I think it's a bad name, but I had to put in a name. So the open, everything is harmonically normal, but something breaks the pattern. Therefore, I thought it was a small problem, but it became a disaster. But it was a blah blah, and then I felt powerless, and I immediately began researching every single energy unit. So that's the hero's calling. I don't want to keep recording. Bye.